This week I had a very clear list of things I wanted to finish, and then I got distracted and totally forgot about it. I ended up doing some art and animation instead. But before we get into the video, if you don't know who I am, I'm Helper Wesley, I've made these games, and I make weekly devlogs. Let's get into the video. So what my list originally was for this week was to get all of the beeps and boops and sound effects and slides and all of those things into the game, and I started out on track. I opened up SFXR, a wonderful free gamey sound effects creator, and set out to make a sliding stone effect. With the new stone border, I had in my head that the sound effects for the menus and things could be like sliding stones, and so I decided to make those. I don't fully understand SFXR, so I tend to just click on randomize over and over and over again until I get something that sounds good, occasionally playing with the sliders like I know what I'm doing. So things started out great. I started off with the sliding stone effect, and then I went and got some coin sound effects for the shop menu. Thankfully there's a button for that, so you just keep clicking that button rather than randomize. So far in the game, the footstep sound has been really grating. I tried to get this like high heels on steel sound effect, because, you know, the main character is a mother character, so obviously she's wearing high heels in a subway. So I really needed to rework that. Typically I'll take things from SFXR and put them into Audacity to play with them further, because I better understand Audacity than I do SFXR. One thing I do know in SFXR though is the randomization sometimes makes music. Anyhow, I proceeded down my list and got a few more sound effects for menus opening up and buttons being pressed and things like that. But the same way that I usually do game design is, as I progress, I slowly integrate things into it. So as I was slowly getting these sound effects, I wanted to be able to put them into the game so I could see how well they were working. So with the shop menus in the city hub, I wanted them to slide in. So I tried giving the shop and upgrade menus in the city hub a sliding in and out animation. And I first tried just by telling the camera to move over, which makes sense in my head that I should just be able to do that, but for some reason it just didn't want to work. That was probably user error. I almost gave up on it until I had an adult moment where I decided I should just look at the wiki. Some kind person took the time to write down the information I needed into these wikis, so I should do the grown-up thing and go look up this information. And then I was like 5 lines down and realized, bored now. I wish I was the kind of person who could read through documents and things, but that's just not me. So what I decided to do was center the layer that the menu is on to an object in the base layer, and then give the base layer top-down mechanics so I can move it in 4 directions and see how the camera reacts. And when I did that, it was very obvious that the camera's going to move in the opposite direction. So like the sliding transition I use in Asteroid Dig, the mobile game I made, I set this up with 2 points, a stop and a start. So when you go over and click E to tell the shop to open up, it changes a variable from 0 to 1, which then applies a force to the object, which brings the menu down. It took some tweaking and fiddling to get it just right, but in the end I got it working. Then I used Audacity to cut off the bits of the sound effect that I created with SFXR that I didn't need, and tweak the length so that it fit with the sliding animation I'd made. And when I did that, I found a bug. I'm not entirely sure why that happened, but I can guess it's because it went by faster than it was able to pick up that they had collided, and so rather than stopping at that point, it just kept on going. So quick fix, I just made those bigger so that there's a bigger buffer area for it to tell that it's in collision with it. So the coin effects I made earlier were actually just terrible. They might work in like a Mario game, but they didn't make any sense here. So what I did was just take out a segment of the sliding stone animation and added fade in, fade out to either side, so then that will be used as the purchasing sound effect. And now that the buy and sell sound effects were stone going in and out, the button really didn't make any sense. So I went through and redrew the buttons to be a stone slab. Again, I gave them darker pixels on the bottom to make them pop off the screen to make them look like they're elevated. And then when the button's pressed, that bottom layer goes away, so it collapses down on itself and looks like the button's actually being pressed. The trouble I had with the footstep sound was that it was really high-pitched, and so it just didn't really make any sense in the game, along with all the other sounds that are kind of lower, and it really stood out amongst everything else. So it needed to be much more mute, and so the only way that I know how to do that is by applying a low-pass filter to it. And so I ran it through a few low-pass filters and changed the pitch down, and just reduced the sound itself down to a lower volume. I tried using the one I made earlier, and that too just didn't seem right. I looked up this tutorial for footstep sound effects, and it had these 3 different layers: a key jingling layer, a stomping sound, and a cloth sound, and then the 3 of them together made the footprint sounds. And it looked pretty good on the tutorial, but when I tried it, it just didn't work. It might just be because I didn't know what I was doing. So I got fed up with all these digital sound effects and just started using things IRL to make the sounds. And the first thing I found was just the back end of a pencil that was sitting nearby. And I thumped that on the desk I was on, and to be honest, I just kind of lucked out. That sound effect works fine in the game. To this point, I was still sort of on track with the whole sound effects thing, but here's where the list just got thrown out the window. I decided that while I was doing all this pixel art, I would just copy and paste the stonework from the city hub into the subway scene, since the subway scene was pretty ugly. The stonework was basically the same thing I'd drawn in the city hub, just copy and paste it over. There were some tricky moments, like having to suddenly think about the stonework being upside down for the upper UI, and then the weird not 45-degree angle shapes I decided to do on the edges. Those were weird too. But ultimately that part was pretty straightforward. Because I wanted to unify the color palette that I'm kind of making on the fly, the heat bar that was there originally needed to get swapped out for colors that I'm using now. I grabbed the red color from the wine/cooking oil bottle from the foodstuffs icon, and changed the hue down to a blue color, so it's a blue and red, and then gave them a swirl effect. So it's like 2 liquids in a lava lamp kind of thing. I wanted to do something more artsy, but I don't know how. I'm not an artist. So this weird swirl effect thing we'll just have to do. And I would say this was a major improvement for the subway scene, even though it still has buggy bugs, and the demons don't quite do anything yet, other than just make a beeline for the train. So since I was redoing the artwork for the UI, I figured I would also do the inside of the train. Because at this point the list is gone, it's blowing away in the wind, I'm just never going to get back to it, so why not? I again grabbed colors from the UI icons I'd made earlier, so they would all kind of match together, and then actually broke those UI icons apart and put them on the benches and things to fill up the train. Since this is a furnace-powered train, I figured it needed some piping. I wanted to add some more detailing to the train, but just nothing really came to mind, sadly. So in the old train, I had it so that if things weren't in the light, they weren't visible. But now that I've drawn the whole train out, I decided to make the things not in the light a lot darker. And I kind of like how it turned out. And as I was admiring my handiwork in-game, I realized that the sun animation was now A, broken, and B, ugly. Well, it was always ugly, but now it just stands out a lot more. It was basically placeholder art anyways, so it really needed to be updated. I wanted the sun character to be kind of cute, so he's just tall enough to reach the shelves and work on them, but not really. And when he's sitting down on the benches in the train, I want him to look like he's sort of preoccupied, thinking about other things. Since I have a son, I realize that they move a lot. And so I wanted to make sure that this character was moving quite a bit, either fidgeting with things at all times, or, for example, with the refueling task, instead of having him, shoveling in coal like some kind of hard labor worker, I gave him a little stick with embers at the end of it, and he's just poking the fire. I tried animating the selector image with the same animation that the sun has, but it just seemed like every now and again it would desync. So instead now it just hides while you're not dragging it, and when you drag it, it shows itself again. So the last thing I did today was work on the jump sound effect. Lightspeed in the Discord has been talking about this since I first implemented the jump. Basically, it just has a really harsh sounding effect, and hearing the same one over and over and over again makes it really annoying. Even with a little randomized pitch shift happening, it still gets on your nerves. So I looked around at other games that did jump effects, and a lot of them don't have that harsh they're usually just an exhale sound. And so I've recorded myself exhaling into the microphone over and over and over again, and I won't torture you by making you listen to that, but you can listen to this finished version. And it's a lot less abrasive. And between changing the audio for that and adding a different pitch shift to it, I got this. So yeah, that's what I got done this week. I tried to stick to a list, but either way I got a lot of work done, and I'm much happier now with the way everything looks. There's nothing worse than sound effects and visuals annoying your players. So yeah, that's what I got done this week. I got some sound effects, and then I got distracted, and then I got some artwork done, and then some animations. Hopefully that made for an interesting video. And so like always, if you enjoyed this video, maybe click on that subscribe button. And if you want to talk to me personally, the link to our Discord is down below. It's called the Gamedev Fireside. It's a pretty chill place to hang out and talk game dev. And if you decide to click on that link, then I will see you there.